We now understand that with asymmetric encryption, it takes two keys, one to encrypt, one to decrypt. And with hashing, we're not interested so much in encryption, but as running something through an algorithm, so we see a fixed length result. You change one little thing and that result is very different. So we can see whether or not the thing has changed. Both of these techniques, however, are based on cryptography. And we talked about the idea of a certificate, and we know that a certificate is a key on a file, on a document. And the certificate will also include, like I'd said before, how long is this thing good for, who issued it, what's it used for, is it used for email, is it used for authentication, what's it used for? Is it used for just regular data encryption? So we have these certificates that we give away. Now, all of the major operating systems, you can create certificates from them. They either have a service or they will generate their own. And so there are tools and services that you can use to make your own certificates. The only thing about it is that they're only known by you, so they're not really for e-commerce. We'll talk more about certification authorities in just a minute. So with the certificate, I can have a certificate assigned to a user account or to my computer. And the user account is for when I want to do things, like when I want to authenticate, I can use a certificate to help prove my identity. Or if I want to encrypt something, the device, the computer, can have a certificate when it needs to make a connection to a server and have an encrypted network session. And so you can have both users and computers have certificates. And all operating systems have the ability to do that. Now let's talk about where the certificates actually came from. And I was joking about GoDaddy, but GoDaddy actually is an issuer of certificates. So it starts with a service run by an organization, VeriSign, Thought, GoDaddy, Microsoft, there's a whole bunch of them. And they have a server that has a special kind of service on it. And that special service is called a certification authority or a certificate server. And the whole purpose of this server is to issue these certificates. And what you do is, I mean, you can go on GoDaddy and you can purchase a certificate. You can go to VeriSign and purchase a certificate. Some of them are $10, some of them are $600. It depends upon what the usage is for. And basically, they'll check you out and get information from you. And if you're using it for e-commerce, they'll check you a little bit more stringently than if you just want it for personal use. The whole idea, though, is they are a known entity. They are a known certificate authority. They have issued the certificate. And we all know it comes from them because we looked in our browser and we saw all of those trusted root certification authority certificates. So like if we take a look right now and we look in a browser, we can see that Windows 8 right here and right now that ships with Internet Explorer 10 comes with the certificates of the top trusted roots. So let's go take a look here in Internet Options. Let's take one more look here. We go to Content, we go to Certificates, and we go to Trusted Root Certification Authorities. These are all the known organizations, certificate authorities, they're actually servers, that issue these certificates. So we now, it ships right with the operating system, comes right with it. So we already now know the certificate of GoDaddy or the certificates of Thought, VeriSign, Microsoft, etc. Now here's where it becomes significant. They issue us a certificate because we're going to have an e-commerce website or we're going to use encrypted email or something like that. They issue it to us. Between you and me, I never have to give you my public key until the last minute. But I receive a certificate from a known entity, a trusted root. You have their public key, and you will use their public key to verify the cert that I have. Remember how we were talking about the public key and the private key? And we're talking about if I want to have you give me something that only I can look at, I need to give you my public key. You encrypt with the public key. You give it back to me. I possess the private key, and I can look at it. That's the whole basic concept behind e-commerce and shopping online. That in the background, I slip you the public key, my public key. You encrypt, send it back to me. I look at it with my private key. This is a distinction you'll need to know for the exam. Now, what if I need to prove that something came from me? I can go the exact opposite way. I can give you and everybody else in the world my public key. I'm the only one who possesses the private key. I can attach onto this whatever it is a little something created by my private key. Basically a little sort of encryption. Now you don't have to decrypt it, but I create this little digital signature attached. I'm the only possessor of the private key who can actually do this. It's attached to the email attachment file, the network packet, whatever, the IP packet. You have my public key. When you receive this thing that I have signed with my private key, you can use my public key to verify it, to verify the signature. So be clear in your mind. If you have Sue and Sally, and Sue needs to send something to Sally that only Sally can read. Sally has got to send Sue her public key. Sue encrypts it. She sends it. Sally uses the private key to look at it. If Sue needs to know that something came from Sally, Sally will use the public key, or excuse me, Sally will use her private key to digitally sign that thing, send it. Sue uses Sally's public key to verify the signature. So this is how the concept of encryption and digital signatures work. The reason why, if I have a website and you're purchasing from me, why you trust my certificate is because it has been digitally signed by one of those trusted routes, one of these certificate authorities. And you've got the public key to prove that signature is valid. So this is how we have this whole PKI system working, public key infrastructure. Certificate authority hands out keys. We give out the public keys. And I either sign something with a private key, send it out, you verify with the public, or you take my public key, encrypt, and send it to me, and I decrypt with the private. That's the whole public key infrastructure concept. So here are the components. The CA, the Certificate Authority, or the Certification Authority. This is a thing, the server, the service actually, that runs on a server, that issues certificates and digitally signs them. The certificates are keys basically on a file or a document. When I, as an entity, as a company, want to get a certificate from a CA, if I'm doing e-commerce, I will apply to a registration authority, and like in the case of VeriSign or GoDaddy, the two services are run by the same company. The registration authority takes all my contact information, checks me out, okay, they're legitimate, tells the CA it's okay, please go ahead and issue a certificate. The CA gives me the certificate, and now I can use it in my website. I can import it in my website, and it's used automatically. On my server or my computer, I will have a certificate repository database, and I can view my certificates using a certificate management system. And we can actually do that even here using Windows. We can actually see this. I'm going to actually open up the built-in Windows certificate management system. I just simply opened a MMC console. I'm going to snap in the certificate services right here. So here's certificates. I'm going to add it right here, just for myself is fine. And we're going to actually take a look right here. I can see over here certificates that I, as a user, have right now. I can look in the personal store and go take a peek. I have none at the moment. If I needed a certificate, I could right-click and I could all tasks and request a certificate. I could also go to GoDaddy's site or VeriSign's site and fill out some forms and pay a fee and request a certificate that way. When you do it here in Windows, you're basically using Active Directory and certificate services to distribute certificates within your corporate domain. So we have the certificate management system right here. We have a certificate repository database, and if I look here, I can see that there are trusted root certificates already here, and I can open them up. I can go to GoDaddy right here. This is the very same one we were looking at before. You can see that the certificate, it says it was issued to, issued by, valid from this point to that point. We can see the details. We can also see that the signature itself is using SHA-1 RSA, and that it's a particular version of certificate, and it's valid from and to. It's used as a certification authority certificate. Here's the public key, and so we can see all sorts of information about it. So this is the whole idea behind PKI, and the beauty of it is that you get a certificate authority, which, by the way, you can install your own if it's just within your own company and do it for free, and then we can import these into email and creating VPN connections or encrypting files, or we can put them on smart cards for authentication. We can use them for all kinds of purposes. So the process is that I need to get the key pair. A CA has to give it to me. So the CA is going to issue me the certificate. They're going to digitally sign my key so that everybody knows that it's legit. And it will also certify me as the identity, the person, the user, whatever, certify me. And then, if necessary, revoke my certificate. Like, my certificate has an expiration date. And if the application, like the browser, is paying attention, it can look at the expiration date and say, oh, this is expired. I no longer trust you. Forget it. Unfortunately, very often, if we choose to revoke certificates, like maybe somebody leaves a company, we're revoking the certificate, they don't need it anymore, or they were doing something fraudulent, we revoke the certificate, it's actually up to the end consumer to verify that the certificate was revoked. There are actually out on the internet servers around where browsers can check the revocation list, the certificate revocation list, the CRL, to see if the certificate was revoked. Unfortunately, that takes time, and a lot of folks have that turned off on their browser. Or, how many times have you seen this? You click something and up pops a message saying, the certificate is not trusted, do you want to proceed? People just say yeah, and they go ahead anyway. So realize now that if you're going to use certificates, you actually have to make sure that they are valid and whether or not they've been revoked or expired. So we know then, we understand with the certificate, the idea that we can encrypt, we can also use the certificate to create digital signatures. We've actually seen how hashing works. And we can use this for email attachments, for browsing on the internet, for using SSL, the successor to SSL, TLS, the Transport Layer Security. We can use it for VPNs when we're connecting across the internet from home to our workplace, using IPsec or some other kind of VPN. We can use it for wireless if we want, from using encryption for WEP and WPA2, which are the two very common forms of encryption for wireless, so we can use encryption for that. We don't have to use certificates, but we can for really all of these. We can use it for HTTPS, which basically uses SSL and now TLS. So the whole idea of encryption is something that we can use across the board in just about anything. And the most secure way of maintaining those keys is through using certificates.